Hello dear tea friends from around the world. Welcome to a new tea class with me, Stéphane Erler, the founder of the Tea Masters blog and the tea-masters.com tea boutique. Today we are starting our series of winter classes dedicated to high oxidation and full oxidation teas. This tea class comes after another tea class I made about low oxidized oolongs in the fall. I hope that you have seen this class. If not, you can see it. It's on YouTube in my videos, so don't hesitate to watch them to get a full picture of especially high mountain oolongs and roasted oolongs, which are all rather low oxidized. But today we are going to do a different type of tea, which is very fitting the winter season, because the fully oxidized and the high oxidized oolongs, these are very warming, very comforting. They bring a lot of ripe fruit, and naturally they are much sweeter than the low oxidized fresh high mountain oolongs, for instance, or Tieguanin that we have had in the fall. So let's start with which tea did I choose for this class. Actually, in order to make the link between the class of fall and this winter class, I chose this Alishan red tea made from Qingxin Oolong. Qingxin Oolong is a cultivar, and we can see that it looks very, very different from high mountain oolong. High mountain oolong, if you remember, looks very green and is bowl shaped, rolled. The leaves are rolled. Here what we have are single leaves which are very dark in color. We also have some buds. The leaves are very, very small. So two very different teas, but amazingly they come from the same plantation. In Alishan we are able to make two very different teas, and this is one of the things that makes tea so interesting, is that with the same plant, with a different process, you are able to achieve two very completely different teas. So why do we have this tea? Let's do some history. Remember that high mountain oolongs started in the 1980s, and it started in Alishan. It was a new type of tea, and people realized very quickly that the higher the elevation, the lighter the aromas, the more refined the taste, and the cooler the taste. And these cool aromas, they really are created by the cold climate in the high elevation. So Alishan, being a high mountain, we are over 1,200 meters in this case. In this case, actually, we are almost at 1,500 meters in Jiangsu. So these teas, when they are produced in spring, they benefit really from very cold nights and still rather short days, where the sun is very strong, but for a short period of time, usually in the morning. In the afternoon come some clouds or some mist that already starts to cool down the leaves and bring them freshness. And in the afternoon and the night, then it becomes really very cold. And really, this kind of cold temperatures, they are very ideal to make fresh high mountain oolong. And that's the best season to make high mountain oolong. However, what do you do with the same leaves 50-60 days later, when they are growing again and can be harvested again? But now the temperatures are not as cool, And if you do another time oolong once more, this oolong won't be as fresh, won't be as refined as the oolong made in the spring or in the late or in the winter. There are also very nice winter harvests around October, November. But if you are in June, July, it's much warmer. So in the past, because there was such a large demand for high mountain oolongs, the farmers would still try to make a cheaper, a lower grade version of their high mountain oolong in June, July. Sometimes, and very often it was sold at a lower price. Sometimes it was even sold to tea bottle industries making mass producing tea, and they needed, of course, a lower cost. So this was the kind of tea that was produced. But in 2005, 2006, roughly, there was a new interest for red tea, which started in China. It started with Jinjunmei, this type of Lapsang Shaochong, and that made red teas really popular again. And since 2006, there is also therefore a trend in the tea world to make more red teas or high oxidized oolongs, and this red tea from Alishan actually started around that time, that the farmers in the high mountains in Taiwan, they realized, oh, now actually there is also a demand not just for fresh oolongs but also for red teas. Of course, there was a demand for Oriental Beauty for a long time, but in the high mountain there are fewer TG acids, so this was more difficult to make. We will see later in a different class that there were some successful attempts also to make a new tea called concubine. But in Alishan, and this farmer in particular, he thought, okay, let's do a red tea and do it in summer when the temperatures during the day are high enough so that I'm able to oxidize my leaves properly. Because really the difference between a fresh oolong from spring and a red tea is the oxidation level, and it really has to be fully oxidized. That's also why I'm very often not fully satisfied with red teas that I find in the high mountains, even in summer, because the temperatures are still lower than in the east coast of Taiwan, where we have a beautiful red tea we will also see, or in the Sun Moon Lake area in Nantou, where we will also examine two teas, Hongyu and Hongyun, in the course of these classes. So in the high mountains, the challenge to make good red tea really is the temperature, and very often the leaves end up a little bit slightly under-oxidized and a little bit oolong-esque, so you are not always very sure how good it is in the high mountains, and the challenge very often is this oxidation. So let's see about this one, how good it is. Let's preheat our Gaiwan. We are in Gaiwan mode because we are doing a tea class, but porcelain actually is the best material to brew your red teas, so this is actually really very ideal for us to use the Gaiwan. Before we are brewing the red tea, we can smell its enticing smells again. Very high-pitched, a little bit unusual for a red tea, and this is where we can understand the beauty and really how special Qingxin Oolong is as a cultivar, because not only does it bring out these fine notes in the high mountain fresh oolongs, but it's also very, very nice, very light and very fine as a red tea. Hopla. Compared to other cultivars, really, Qingxin Oolong, you will see, is very specific. Also, as a red tea, the smells are very, very refined. They have a lightness, which is not because of the low oxidation, but because of the cultivar. We can pour a bit stronger because we are in a tea class mode. My leaves are a bit broken. This is the end of that was the end, the bottom of the bag. You will probably have you will see probably larger leaves, longer leaves, and you will realize that these leaves are harvested very differently than high mountain oolongs in the spring, where you will have on one stem a bud and 2, 3, sometimes even 4 leaves. Here we see that there is only one leaf, and these leaves are all, always single. So either it's a bud or it's the first leaf under the bud. The other leaves that are growing below were not harvested, and this is also what makes this tea so fine, is that the larger, the more mature leaves, which quickly lose their freshness, they were not harvested. So this is how the quality of this tea, of this red tea, is guaranteed. Is because the farmer had only the best, the freshest, smallest leaves harvested. Et voilà, a very clear tea soup, and we can see some little hair swimming at the surface of the cup. This is not dust. This is, or if you want, this is tea dust. These are the hair that are growing naturally on the leaves of Qingxin, and you can see really very clear, bright color. It is really red or dark orange. The smells are really very fine. And there is this sweetness also now in the back of the throat. This is really very high grade. I love this tea. It's a very interesting high mountain red tea, and this one I'm really satisfied with the oxidation level. We can see that the leaves, the open leaves, are evenly oxidized. It's not just the edges, but the whole leaf is. Of course, this is not the type of red tea that will be the most oxidized. We will see others that are oxidized more thoroughly, but this does the job. It does not have, we say, a Qingwei, an under-oxidized taste, and the smell is really very specific. It's very pure. It's not a mix, and it's also not artificially scented. And it is from the high mountains, so it does have this specific energy and refinement from the high mountains. Very nice, very interesting. So I think this is really worth to, even if you are more into oolongs, to try this Qingxin Oolong cultivar, which is usually made, which is usually used to make high mountain oolongs. Now, as a red tea, I think this is really extraordinary to have this experience, and this one is well done. Now, in the meantime, of course, since 2006, the farmers had almost 15 years to get the process better adjusted. Of course, high mountain oolongs is still their specialty, where they put their focus, and the red teas in the summer are more a way to make a good use of the land and the leaves that are present. Of course, it's still not the main focus in Taiwan, in the high mountains. It will still be the fresh oolongs. But this one is definitely a very good example of what Qingxin Oolong can be transformed also into as a red tea. And the quality is good because it comes from Alishan. It comes from very well-preserved plantation. I've visited it with a farmer, and he showed me that some bushes were dead. He did not replace them. He let them die on their own. He was doing the weeding by manual means, taking away weed that was growing in among the bushes in summer. So he's not using chemicals to do this, and he's only using the best leaves for this harvest. So this is all goes and adds up to the quality of this tea. And with porcelain, this is the best way to brew it. So I'm sure you are having a wonderful class discovering this tea, and we hope that it will continue to be harvested. It's really worth it to have also red tea from the high mountains. And thank you very much for your interest. And I will see you after the Chinese New Year for another tea class.